Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Some people burn bridges. You, my friend, took the blueprint and rebuilt the entire city. That's the reality most refuse to admit. Not everyone walks away. Not everyone transforms betrayal into an empire of their own making. The truth is brutal. Humans waste an average of 6 years tolerating toxic relationships they secretly know are killing their potential. 6 years gone because they thought patience was strength. But patience without boundaries is just an unpaid subscription to disappointment. You didn't just leave. You didn't quietly slip into the background, hoping life would make sense on its own. You detonated the old foundation and claimed the fallout as your new beginning. Every slight, every manipulation, every ignored boundary became fuel. And somewhere in that chaos, you realized something most people never do. Leaving isn't the climax. It's the opening scene of the story you were always meant to star in. It's not revenge, it's mathematics. For every ounce of nonsense they handed out, you multiplied it into proof of your own evolution. The irony is delicious. You didn't just exit, you upgraded. You didn't just survive, you collected. You didn't just close a door, you acquired the keys to the entire building and everything inside. And yes, there's a touch of dark humor in it, because while they were busy trying to figure out your worth, you were busy proving it beyond question. The lesson isn't subtle, it's seismic. Leaving behind what doesn't serve you isn't just self-respect, it's strategic genius. And by the time the dust settles, the people who thought they mattered the most are left staring at a space you've already outgrown. This isn't about making noise, it's about making impact. And once you see the mechanics behind such exits, there's no going back to ordinary fare, no settling for less than monumental. Number 1, you stop negotiating your worth with people who can't afford the price tag. For years, you tried to make everyone see your value, bending, stretching, and explaining yourself over and over, as if people who didn't respect your time or energy could suddenly wake up and understand. You bargained with your own worth, hoping they would finally meet you halfway, and every compromise slowly chipped away at who you were. But then it clicked. You realized some people don't negotiate because they want fairness. They negotiate because they want a discount. And you are not a discount. You are not a favor to be earned, nor a convenience to be consumed until empty. You started seeing it clearly. When people fail to recognize what you bring to the table, it's not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of their limitations. You stop pretending that explanations, excuses, or extra effort could make them see the brilliance you carry. You stop trying to fit into spaces where your presence alone should have been celebrated. And in doing so, you reclaimed power that had been quietly siphoned away by expectation, manipulation, and neglect. Walking away from people who can't meet your standard of respect isn't about arrogance. It's about clarity. It's understanding that your energy is finite and sacred, and spending it on those who undervalue it is a slow self-erasure. You realize that if you lower your worth to make others comfortable, you will never truly rise. And when you finally stopped negotiating, something extraordinary happened. You became untouchable, unmovable, and utterly free. No one had to witness it. No one had to approve. The moment you stopped bargaining for recognition, your life started operating on a new frequency, one where your presence demanded the respect it always deserved. You didn't just leave. It was an exit so thorough it reset the entire dynamic. And the people who once thought they could dictate your value were left staring at the consequences of their own refusal to honor it. They learned the hard way. Your worth was never theirs to negotiate. Number 2, you turned their disrespect into the receipts you needed to refund your energy. For too long, you carried the weight of people who didn't care how heavy it was. Every insult, every dismissive look, Every small betrayal added to an invisible ledger that no one else could see. But you could feel every line etched into your spirit. You absorbed it, tried to explain it away, and even forgave it, hoping that maybe one day they would see what they had done. But eventually, the truth became undeniable. Their disrespect wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. And patterns, once recognized, are not meant to be tolerated. They are meant to be accounted for. You realized that every ounce of energy you gave without return was not kindness. It was an unpaid bill, an IOU they never intended to settle. So you stopped thinking of yourself as the victim and started seeing yourself as the creditor. Every insult became a receipt, every slight a record of what was owed. And the more you catalogued, the clearer the picture became. You didn't need revenge because acknowledgement of your boundaries was more powerful than any act of retaliation. Your energy had value, and their misuse of it became undeniable proof that you were done wasting it. Turning disrespect into receipts is a form of liberation. It means you no longer let memory and resentment sit like weight in your chest. You turn it into evidence of why you must rise, why you must move forward, and why the people who refuse to honor you can no longer claim a place in your life. Every moment they tried to diminish you became fuel, and every attempt to break you became a step toward reclaiming yourself. By the time you fully detached, you weren't bitter, you were precise. The ledger of their actions, once a source of pain, became your map to freedom. You didn't just exit, you converted neglect into clarity, disrespect into boundaries, and mistreatment into proof that you are worth far more than anyone ever dared to give. And in that transformation, you learned the most profound truth. When you finally cash in the receipts of disrespect, the refund isn't just money, it's yourself, returned whole, unbroken, and untouchable. Number 3, you replaced emotional charity with emotional boundaries. For too long, you gave freely to people who never learned how to give back. You offered patience, understanding, and forgiveness like it was currency, and they spent it carelessly, never appreciating the weight of what they were taking. You thought generosity was about endurance, that being kind meant absorbing their chaos without complaint. But kindness without boundaries isn't strength, it's surrender. And surrender, over time, erodes the very core of who you are. At some point, you realize that the world doesn't need another martyr. It needs people who know their value, people who protect their energy like it's sacred because it is. You stopped giving away emotional labor to those who wouldn't respect it. You stopped excusing behavior that drained you. You stopped apologizing for wanting space, peace, and respect. That was when emotional charity transformed into emotional strategy. Every ounce of your attention, every drop of care was no longer automatic. It was deliberate, reserved for those who deserved it. Boundaries are not walls, they are declarations. They say, I see your limits, I see mine, and I will not allow either to be violated. When you replace charity with boundaries, you stop the endless cycle of exhaustion, resentment, and regret. People who once treated your patience as infinite began to notice, not because you shouted, but because you finally made your absence count. Your presence became a choice, not an obligation, and the difference was seismic. This shift doesn't make you cold, it makes you whole. You stopped being everyone's emotional bank while being bankrupt yourself. You became selective, intentional, and unwavering. Those who respected your boundaries thrived alongside you. Those who didn't naturally fell away. And in that process, you realized something vital. Protecting your emotional space isn't selfish. It's the only way to ensure that when you do give, it's powerful, transformative, and never wasted. Replacing charity with boundaries was the act that reclaimed your life, your energy, and ultimately, your sanity. Number 4, You mastered the art of leaving without making a speech. There's a power in walking away that most people will never understand. It isn't dramatic, and it isn't performative. It's not about proving a point or showing them what they lost. It's about realizing that some people are so invested in their version of the story that no explanation could ever reach them. You tried once, twice, maybe even a dozen times, but words are heavy, and people who don't value you will twist them, ignore them, or forget them entirely. Eventually you understood. Leaving doesn't need justification. Leaving doesn't require an audience. Leaving is its own statement. When you finally walked away, it wasn't a silent protest. It was a strategic exit. Every step forward became louder than anything you could have said. Every moment of reclaiming your time, energy, and space was a testament to the truth they refused to acknowledge. You didn't need to articulate your reasons, because your actions carried all the weight. The very act of removing yourself from toxicity, manipulation, or neglect was louder than any speech you could have delivered. And the beauty of it is that leaving silently demands attention without demanding consent. People notice absence when it's meaningful, and absence in this way is unarguable. Mastering this art also taught you patience. You learned that some people only recognize value when it's gone. That's not vindictive, that's reality. You didn't do it to make them regret it. You did it because your life couldn't continue in a space where you weren't honored. Every day you stayed to explain yourself was a day wasted on someone incapable of understanding you. By leaving without a speech, you liberated yourself from the exhausting task of trying to be seen by the blind, heard by the deaf, and understood by the unwilling. This mastery doesn't make you cold, it makes you intelligent. It turns your exit into a full statement, and in that space, you gain something far greater than attention. You gain freedom. And freedom, once tasted, becomes unstoppable. Number 5, you stopped competing in spaces where you were the only one playing fair. For years, you tried to play by the rules, believing that honesty, integrity, and effort would be recognized and rewarded. You gave your all, followed the unspoken codes, and trusted that fairness was universal. But life has a way of teaching you a brutal truth. Some arenas are designed for cheaters, manipulators, and opportunists, and no amount of loyalty or diligence will change that. You were competing with people who didn't care about ethics, who thrived on shortcuts, and who saw your fairness not as strength, but as weakness to exploit. At some point, the exhaustion became too heavy to ignore. You realized that competing in such spaces was not noble. It was self-destructive. Every victory was hollow, every effort wasted, because the game itself was rigged against those who played by principle. You weren't failing because you lacked skill. You were failing because the rules were never meant to favor the upright. And when you recognized this, everything shifted. You stopped trying to outplay the unfair. You stopped justifying your efforts to people who had no intention of matching them. You stopped bending your values to fit a world that rewarded compromise over character. Leaving that arena didn't feel like giving up. It felt like reclaiming power. You redirected your energy toward spaces where fairness mattered, where integrity was recognized, and where your presence could actually influence outcomes rather than being drained by manipulation. You learned that winning isn't always about beating others. It's about choosing the right battleground. By stepping out of the toxic competition, you preserved your energy, your dignity, and your sanity. This shift also changed how people saw you. Suddenly, those who thrived on chaos could no longer pull you into their games. Your refusal to compete on their terms became a statement louder than any argument could be. You weren't participating anymore, and that absence was more powerful than any effort ever wasted. You realized the ultimate victory wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in proving to yourself that your worth, your values, and your peace were non-negotiable. and that kind of victory lasts forever. Number 6, you finally understood that healing isn't revenge, it's repossession. For too long, you thought healing meant silencing anger, forgiving the unforgivable, or pretending nothing happened. You carried grudges like trophies, thinking that holding on to pain made you strong. You tried to make sense of what was lost, what was stolen, and what was taken for granted. And in that process, you realized something fundamental. The real damage wasn't done by them. It was done by your own willingness to let their actions define your life. Healing, you discovered, isn't about punishing anyone. It's about taking back what is yours. Repossession is different from revenge. Revenge is reactive, loud, and exhausting. It drains energy, traps you in their story, and gives them the illusion of power over you. Repossession, on the other hand, is deliberate, quiet, and absolute. It's claiming back your time, your energy, your peace, and your ambition, everything they tried to diminish. When you repossess yourself, you stop being a passive participant in someone else's narrative. You reclaim every piece of your life that was used, ignored, or taken, and you do it with precision, without apology and without noise. This realization transforms you. You stop looking over your shoulder, stop wondering if they noticed or understood. You stop apologizing for walking away or for prioritizing your growth. Every step you take forward is proof that what they attempted to break cannot be broken. It only becomes stronger, sharper, and more aligned with who you are meant to be. The power lies in movement, in reclamation, in redirecting every ounce of energy once lost into creation rather than retaliation. Healing as repossession teaches an extraordinary truth. You are the sole owner of your life. No one else gets to decide your value, dictate your limits, or control your path. And when you finally understand this, the world bends differently around you. You are no longer haunted by the past because you have repossessed it. You are whole. You are powerful. You are untouchable. Every moment of pain, every slight, every betrayal becomes fuel, not for revenge, but for total reclamation of yourself. And that is the most unshakable form of victory imaginable. Number 7, you stopped apologizing for being the lesson they needed. For years, you carried the weight of their discomfort as if it were your responsibility. Every time they bristled at your honesty, dismissed your boundaries, or rejected your efforts, you apologized. Not because you were wrong, but because they couldn't handle the truth. You tried to soften yourself, tone down your clarity, and shrink into a version that would make them comfortable. But the reality is brutal. Some people resist growth, resist accountability, and resist seeing themselves reflected in someone else's strength. And when you finally realized that, everything changed. You stopped apologizing because you understood that your presence, your honesty, and your boundaries were not meant to soothe their insecurities. They were meant to illuminate them. You became the mirror they avoided, the lesson they didn't want to learn, and the reflection of everything they refused to see in themselves. And you realized that trying to make that easier for them was a betrayal of your own evolution. Every apology you had once given for being unapologetically you was a donation of your energy to their comfort, and that energy had a cost. The moment you refused to apologize, you reclaimed power. You stopped diluting your essence to make others feel safe. You stopped apologizing for clarity, for strength, for saying no, for walking away, and for expecting respect. Each time you owned your truth without shame, you became untouchable. People noticed, and some resisted. But that resistance was no longer your problem. Their discomfort was a symptom of their failure to grow, not a reflection of your mistake. This shift is seismic. By refusing to apologize for being the lesson they needed, you redefined every interaction, every boundary, and every choice you make. You move from catering to the fragile ego of others, to commanding the respect your energy deserves. And in doing so, you discovered the most powerful truth. Growth is never convenient for everyone, and your refusal to apologize is the clearest sign that you are no longer available to be anyone's stepping stone. You became the teacher, the boundary, and the standard, and nothing they do can take that away. Number 8, you learned to invest where the interest doesn't drain you. For too long, you poured your energy into people, projects, and situations that never returned anything meaningful. You treated every connection like a bank account, depositing time, effort, and care, only to realize that some accounts are set up to bankrupt you emotionally, mentally, and even physically. You gave endlessly, hoping for reciprocity, for acknowledgement, for growth, but it never came. And somewhere along the way, you discovered a truth most ignore. Investing in the wrong places doesn't just waste resources, it erodes your sense of self. You learned that real investment isn't blind generosity, it's strategic. It's about placing your energy, attention, and loyalty where it yields growth, respect, and alignment. You stopped giving to people who only knew how to take. You stopped committing to projects that drained you without reward. You stopped sacrificing your peace for the convenience of others. Every ounce of effort became intentional. Every decision about where to invest became a measure of your self-respect. You realize that when you invest where the interest drains you, you're not helping anyone. You're just losing yourself. This shift changed everything. Suddenly, every choice carried weight, every interaction was measured, and every effort had a purpose. You weren't stingy, you were wise. You recognized that not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and not every cause deserves your sweat. The people and spaces that do value your energy now get it fully, unreservedly, and authentically. And the beauty of this approach is that the universe has a way of multiplying what you invest wisely. By learning to invest where the interest doesn't drain you, you didn't just protect yourself, you amplified your life. You freed yourself from unnecessary debt of energy and emotion, reclaimed your time, and created space for growth that is real, sustainable, and fulfilling. It's not about holding back, it's about maximizing impact. And once you start investing in the right places, everything you touch becomes sharper, stronger, and more aligned with the person you've worked so hard to become. You stop giving away power and start generating it. Number 9, you outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated them. There comes a point in life when you look back and realize that the person you used to be wouldn't even recognize who you are now. The version of you that tolerated disrespect, that explained too much, that begged for acknowledgement, that stayed in situations that drained every ounce of your energy. It's gone. You evolved. You leveled up. And with that evolution, the space for people who couldn't match your growth simply disappeared. Outgrowing someone isn't about arrogance. It's about survival. It's about refusing to shrink yourself to fit into a world that was never designed to hold your full potential. You used to bend, twist, and mold yourself to make others comfortable, hoping they would eventually see your worth. But over time, you realized that no amount of explanation, patience, or compromise could make someone value what they weren't ready to see. You stopped shrinking. You stopped apologizing for existing at a higher standard than the environment allowed. The person you became demanded respect, integrity, and alignment, and anyone who couldn't provide it naturally fell out of orbit. Outgrowing yourself that tolerated them also means embracing freedom you didn't know you needed. It means leaving behind people, habits, and environments that once felt safe but were actually cages. It's an awakening to the truth that personal growth doesn't just change your life, it changes your ecosystem. Suddenly, the friends, partners, colleagues, and even family members who once defined your world feel small, insufficient, or misaligned. And that's okay. It's supposed to feel that way. This process is messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes lonely, but it's necessary. By outgrowing the version of yourself that tolerated mediocrity, you create space for experiences, people, and opportunities that match your evolved energy. You step into a life where boundaries are respected, effort is reciprocated, and your presence is valued. You no longer wait for permission to be whole. You no longer ask for acceptance from those incapable of giving it. And in that truth, you discover the purest form of liberation, becoming the person you were always meant to be, unapologetically, unshakably, and fully alive. Number 10. You cut ties with people who only loved the parts of you they could use. For far too long, you allowed people to define their affection by convenience rather than connection. They celebrated your strengths but ignored your struggles, admired your victories but dismissed your pain, and clung to the parts of you that served them while leaving the rest to fend for itself. You gave, explained, and tolerated, hoping that love could be negotiated into completeness. But love, real love, isn't selective. It doesn't come in pieces. It's not a transaction or a favor. And once you understood that, you realize something crucial. People who only want parts of you will never want the whole, and the whole is what matters. Cutting ties wasn't a choice made out of anger or spite. It was a declaration of self-respect. You stopped settling for love that required you to fragment yourself, that asked you to dim your light in order to make others comfortable. Every compromise, every rationalization, every second spent patching holes in one-sided relationships was energy stolen from the life you were meant to live fully. And so you walked away, not silently, not with regret, but firmly, reclaiming the parts of yourself you had loaned out without return. In doing so, you discovered clarity. The people who thrived on your selective generosity were revealed for what they really were. Temporary passengers in a journey meant for those capable of reciprocal care. Their absence is not loss, it's liberation. By removing them, you create space for relationships that value you entirely, that see your complexities as beauty rather than burden, and that align with your standards rather than testing them. This act transforms everything. Cutting ties with those who only wanted pieces of you teaches a fundamental truth. Your presence cannot be partial, it cannot be conditional, and it cannot be used as a patchwork solution to fill someone else's gaps. When you finally embrace this, you step into a life where love, respect, and loyalty are not negotiable. They are inevitable, because you have removed everything that was never meant to stay. You stop shrinking, stop bending, and start living unfragmented, complete, and unapologetically whole. Number 11. You stopped trying to solve problems that existed before you arrived. For too long, you carried the weight of other people's chaos as if it were your responsibility. You walked into situations, relationships, and environments thinking that your effort, patience, and understanding could fix what had been broken long before you even showed up. You tried to explain, to mediate, to patch holes that no one else wanted to repair. And for a while, you convinced yourself that it was noble, that your willingness to endure made you strong. But over time, the truth became unavoidable. Some problems were never yours to solve. They existed long before you, and they will continue long after you're gone. At some point, you realized that trying to solve these problems only drained your energy, clouded your judgment, and kept you trapped in cycles that weren't yours. You understood that some people don't want solutions. They want someone to shoulder their discomfort, someone to absorb the consequences of their choices without asking questions. You stopped pretending that your effort could make them change or that your presence could rewrite their story. Your time and energy are finite, and you refuse to spend them on fights you didn't start, fires you didn't light, and patterns you didn't create. Walking away from solving pre-existing problems wasn't about abandonment. It was about survival. You learned to redirect your energy toward areas where your presence could actually create impact, where your effort could be reciprocated, and where your contribution mattered. You stopped being the fixer in a world of people who didn't want to fix themselves. This choice transformed the way you interact with the world. You became selective, strategic, and intentional. You understood that you cannot heal, fix, or carry everyone, and that trying to do so diminishes your own growth. By stepping back from problems that predated you, you reclaim your focus, your peace, and your purpose. And in that space, you discover a remarkable truth. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to solve, but to recognize your limits, protect your energy, and let the chaos that isn't yours unfold without you. Number 12, you didn't retaliate. You recalibrated. For too long, you believed that the natural response to betrayal, disrespect, or manipulation was retaliation. You thought that proving them wrong, showing them pain, or getting even was the way to reclaim power. You gave too much energy to anger, to grudges, to the desire for someone else to understand the consequences of their actions. But in reality, all that energy only tethered you to them, kept you trapped in the story they created, and made you dependent on their acknowledgement for your sense of justice. Eventually, you realized the truth. Power isn't in revenge, it's in recalibration. Recalibration isn't about proving a point. It's about adjusting yourself, your standards, and your energy to align with the life you deserve. It's about stepping away from the frequency of toxicity and elevating to a space where their influence no longer reaches you. You stopped trying to fix, to punish, or to make them understand. Instead, you focused on shifting your own trajectory, amplifying your growth, and reclaiming the energy you had once wasted. Every insult, every slight, every manipulation became a guide, showing you exactly where to raise boundaries, strengthen your resolve, and redirect your effort toward what truly mattered. When you recalibrate, the world changes around you without you having to lift a finger against it. You don't need to confront, to argue, or to justify. Your absence, your focus, and your evolution are enough to show the stark difference between who you were and who you've become. And the irony is exquisite. By not retaliating, you become untouchable. They no longer have leverage over your emotions, your decisions, or your energy. Recalibration transforms pain into power. It teaches that control isn't about changing others. It's about changing yourself and your environment to reflect your worth. By doing this, you stop being reactive and start being deliberate. You stop being a player in their game and become the architect of your own life. And once you embrace this, you discover the ultimate freedom. A life untethered from toxicity, unshakable in its direction, and unstoppable in its growth. Number 13, you honored the warning signs you used to romanticize. For too long you ignored the red flags, laughed off the early signs of disrespect, and convinced yourself that chaos was passion, that inconsistency was mystery, and that toxicity was love. You romanticized what should have set off alarms, masking danger as excitement, manipulation as challenge, and neglect as a test of your devotion. Every gut feeling you dismissed, every boundary you bent, every sign you rationalized became a lesson you didn't want to learn, but had no choice but to face. Eventually you realized that ignoring warning signs isn't courage, it's self-deception. Honoring those warnings required radical honesty with yourself. It meant finally seeing patterns for what they were, not what you wanted them to be. You stopped making excuses for people who repeatedly hurt you. You stopped glossing over small betrayals and pretending they didn't matter. You acknowledged that the signs were never lies. They were the roadmap your intuition provided, and your refusal to follow them had cost you energy, peace, and sometimes parts of yourself. Recognizing this wasn't easy. It meant admitting that your hope for change or belief in potential had blinded you. Once you started honoring the warnings, everything shifted. You became vigilant about the company you kept, the people you trusted, and the situations you allowed into your life. You learned to trust your instincts over explanations, actions over words, and patterns over promises. Each warning became a protective shield rather than a burden, guiding your decisions and protecting your energy. You stopped romanticizing chaos and began valuing stability, consistency, and alignment without compromise. This awakening is transformative. It doesn't just prevent repeated mistakes. It cultivates a life where respect and clarity are non-negotiable. By finally seeing and acting on the warning signs, you reclaim authority over your life. You are no longer a passive participant in someone else's drama. You are the curator of your own environment. Honoring the signs is not fear, it's empowerment. It's the difference between being repeatedly broken and being unshakably whole, between giving away your peace and guarding it fiercely. And in that honor, you find freedom, control, and a version of life you once only imagined. Number 14, you realized your exit isn't a loss. It's an upgrade for both sides. For the longest time, you thought leaving meant failure, that walking away would leave a void, and that absence was a form of loss. You feared the judgment, the questions, and the whispers that follow when someone departs from a space they once occupied. But eventually, you understood the undeniable truth. Leaving isn't about loss. It's about elevation. It's not about what you're giving up. It's about what you're reclaiming. And for the people who remain, it's not just a void, it's a lesson, a mirror, and an opportunity to grow in ways they never could when you were carrying their weight for them. Exiting is a form of clarity. It exposes the truths that were always there but ignored. The people who relied on your presence without giving back, the spaces that thrived on your compromise, and the dynamics that thrived on imbalance. When you step away, you stop being the solution to problems that were never yours to solve. You remove the invisible scaffolding that allowed dysfunction to persist. And in doing so, you create space, not only for your own growth, but for theirs. Sometimes people need absence to understand value. Sometimes they need the shift you create by leaving to finally see what they were missing. Your departure is not dramatic, it's deliberate. It's a statement, a recalibration, and a reclamation of power all at once. You don't leave to punish. You leave because staying would compromise the person you are becoming, and in that exit, both sides are upgraded. You gain freedom, clarity, and alignment with your true self, while those who remain are forced to confront realities they once ignored. They either adapt, evolve, or continue in patterns they've always chosen. Either way, your exit accelerates truth. This understanding transforms everything. You no longer tie your value to staying, enduring, or sacrificing. Leaving becomes a tool, not a failure, a strategic, intelligent, and liberating act. And the irony is that what once felt like an ending is, in fact, the beginning of something far greater for everyone involved. You leave whole, elevated, and unshakable, and the world adjusts to the power you finally reclaimed. The truth is simple but often ignored. Leaving is never just leaving. Every decision to walk away, to reclaim your energy, and to stop tolerating what diminishes you is a declaration of power. It's a statement that your worth is non-negotiable, your time is sacred, and your peace is priceless. You didn't just survive the people, situations, and patterns that tried to hold you back. You transformed them into the fuel for your own evolution. You stopped negotiating your value, stopped excusing disrespect, stopped bending for convenience, and stopped apologizing for your own growth. You recalibrated, you repossessed, and you upgraded, not out of spite, but out of clarity, strategy, and self-respect. Walking away isn't the end. It's the opening of a new chapter, where your presence, energy, and focus are aligned with what truly matters. Every boundary you set, every lesson you learned, every choice to protect your peace became a step toward freedom. The chaos that once held you captive now serves as proof of your strength, and the people who underestimated you are now spectators to your rise. This journey is not just about leaving, it's about becoming, evolving, and asserting the truth of who you are. When you embrace that power, nothing can diminish your light and nothing can hold you back. So remember, your exit is not a failure. It's a reclamation. It's a transformation. It's a blueprint for how to live without compromise, without apology, and without surrender. It's proof that the only approval you ever needed was your own, and the only energy worth giving is that which respects and reciprocates your value. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that empower and elevate. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story of reclaiming power and rising above. Your journey matters, and your growth inspires others. Stay blessed always.